What's up guys? We have several new interviews that provide us with more information on Zacks Role, narrative changes, and more, so let's not waste any time and take a look at some of the highlights. However, it should be noted that I use Google Translate for these articles, so take what I say with a grain of salt. If anyone has any corrections or more accurate translations, please let me know in the comments section. And guys, for all future Final Fantasy updates, theories, and other content, please consider subscribing so you don't miss out. The first thing I'd like to touch on comes from FFDream. When asked about Genesis, Kitase simply said he can't tell us anything about him, followed by laughter. This doesn't really confirm anything despite what some fans might think. I'm personally not a fan of Genesis, but I could see him at least being in the combat simulator as an optional boss. If he's introduced into the story, I hope it's a very minor role and doesn't turn the story into a convoluted mess. I do have to admit though, I am a little worried he'll be returning because ever since the Rebirth logo was revealed, it's reminded me of his sword. Based on some of the events in Crisis Core, it's possible we see him appear in Zacks Role in Rebirth. I won't go into details about why it's possible Genesis could appear alongside Zack, as it's enough content for a standalone video, but if you're interested in my thoughts on the matter, maybe I'll make a specific video about Genesis. Let me know in the comments section if you'd like me to make one. Both Hamaguchi and Kitase revealed more details on available costumes. Kitase said there are perhaps some that are very well hidden in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, followed by Hamaguchi saying there will be more choices than the previous game, so if you like spending time changing the look of characters, you'll have a good time. This is fantastic news for those hoping for more customization. The fact that some are very well hidden is awesome to hear. In my opinion, discovering hidden items is one of the things that makes a game so great. In the days before the internet, when replaying older Final Fantasy games, there was always something new to discover. As long as the costumes and other items are hidden well in Rebirth, I'll be happy. Our next interview comes from Hobby Consoles. Hamaguchi said Zack plays a very important role in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth by helping to tell the story in its entirety. At the end of the game, when they break through the barriers of destiny, suddenly anything was possible and people didn't know what was going to happen from that point on. The Whispers are very involved in all of this, and Zack takes on a very similar role in Rebirth. I've mentioned this before, but I'll go ahead and mention it again. It's likely Zack will be taking on a role of returning things to the way they should be. Being the hero that he is, this will ultimately lead to self-sacrifice. The Whispers were trying to preserve Destiny, and since Hamaguchi said Zack takes on a very similar role, I think he'll be doing everything he can to undo the problems Sephiroth created, even if it means sacrificing himself. I mentioned in another video we may encounter the Whispers in Zack's world rather than the main party's world, and now that seems even more likely knowing he'll be taking on a very similar role. Continuing on, he says, through Zack, you will discover more about what happened after you break through the restriction of fate and escape that timeline. You're going to discover what could really be happening and how it could all end. He plays a very important role in all of that, so I think fans of Zack in Crisis Core and the original game are going to be happy to see more of him, and I think he's going to have even more fans after this. Zack's popularity is largely due to Crisis Core, where players saw just how much of a hero he was. Stating that Zack will have even more fans after this makes me think he will play the role as the unsung hero in this story. The main party won't be aware, but their success will largely depend on Zack's role, and his death will hit even harder this time around because it will be a heroic sacrifice. According to Hamaguchi, we're going to discover what could really be happening and how it could all end. So it sounds like we're going to have a lot of questions answered by the end of Rebirth. I'm sure the ending will leave things on a major cliffhanger, but not to the point where we don't know what's going on, kinda like how Remake ended. Our final interview comes from Everyeye. There are several notable things said by Hamaguchi, so let's take a look. He made it very clear how important it is to form bonds in this game. He points out the importance of building these relationships and friendships with other party members, not only during the main storyline, but side missions as well. And he pointed out that synergy is supposed to symbolize how well the characters know each other. It all works together to achieve one final goal, to generate a huge emotional shock in the player when we finally find out what happens to Aerith. Honestly, it sounds like they're setting us up to be even more devastated than we were in the original. I've said it before, but killing someone else off would be so pointless. I personally want to see Aerith's death play out in the exact same way, but even if it doesn't and they save her death for part 3, Hamaguchi and others have said countless times, and even recently, this trilogy will link up with Advent Children, so everyone dead set on Aerith living, be prepared for her to die in part 3. And if someone other than Zack is killed off at the end of Rebirth, then it would need to be completely undone by the end of the trilogy for it to lead into Advent Children. Someone else's death adds nothing other than shock value. What's the point of putting a huge emphasis on building these bonds only for Cloud or Zack to save her? Any of the party members saving Aerith wouldn't generate a huge emotional shock, unless of course they died in her place. But again, why? Her death, however, would absolutely generate a huge emotional shock after spending the entire game building these strong emotional bonds. Further down, Hamaguchi touches on secondary characters and how we can expect them to play a larger role. He specifically mentions Priscilla and Dio. I can't imagine Priscilla having an expanded role story-wise, but I think she'll be a lot more memorable this time around. Dio played a minor role in the original, so how much they expanded his role, whether it's his involvement in the Gold Saucer, or how and why he acquired the Keystone, will be interesting to see. And last but certainly not least, I want to briefly go over the rating summary. The very first thing that caught my eye was cutscenes depict further instances of violence, sometimes with splatters / pools of blood, characters impaled or slashed by swords, sometimes with slow motion effects. First of all, I'm glad there will be plenty of blood in this game. I was disappointed with Genova's alien-like blood in Remake. Don't get me wrong, I thought it looked pretty cool, but it fell short in delivering that ominous feeling we got in the original. This entire description fits the violence we've seen towards Tifa in the trailer. She's slashed, there's blood spatter, and it's in slow motion. However, the questionable word is impaled. While I'm sure we're all thinking the obvious, it could be plenty of other things. Tifa's father, Cloud's mother, etc. The next thing that stuck out to me was an assassin throwing a spinning blade at a targeted figure. So the obvious thought is Yuffie, but I'm inclined to believe otherwise. We can't dismiss the tension between Wutai and Shinra. I think this assassin might be from Wutai sent to target Rufus. This will escalate the situation between them, leading into a major conflict in Part 3. We're definitely going to get more development between Shinra and Wutai than we did in the original, so I don't think it's out of the question to think this might be referring to someone else. It might even be the hooded figure we saw in one of the trailers. Perhaps he's there to assassinate Rufus. Next up, we have some revealing outfits, for example, deep cleavage. We all saw this one coming simply because they were going to Costa del Sol, but I'm curious if we'll get to see the outfits from Ever Crisis in this game, or if they'll have brand new outfits we've never seen. In addition, we also apparently have someone saying, "Just admit it, you're obviously captivated by my bodacious beach bod." I mean, what? There's not much to say on this one, but my money is on Johnny, Roche, or Hojo. And at the very bottom, we see the words shit, asshole, and prick. The last line might as well just say Sid. If you guys enjoyed this video, hit that like button and please consider subscribing. As always, let me know your thoughts in the comment section, and more specifically, who has the bodacious beach bod? Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.